Have you ever sat in that heavy silence at a family dinner, here on Women's Life Stories? We retell those moments, honest, everyday, sometimes controversial. Every story is a mirror. Subscribe, join the conversation, and maybe find a little healing. The balloon said 69 in chrome letters and kept catching the light on the TV screen. The tablecloth was white cotton pressed until it looked like snow. Steam rose from the pot on the back burner. Cumin garlic a little chilly. My hands were sticky with masa when Sienna touched the back of the head chair with 2 fingers and smiled for the room. "That seat is for my mother," she said. "Elena, could you sit by the kitchen door in case we need anything?" Forks froze midair. Someone laughed and then swallowed the sound. The perfume she wore was bright and bitter citrus with an edge. Bergamot. It lingered while the gas hummed under my skillet. I did not answer. I set my spatula down and rubbed masa off my fingertips. For a second, my eyes found the green sofa against the far wall, the one my husband and I had carried into the house on a damp night decades ago, the one Sienna said looked tired. I blinked and the sofa became the past. 2 years earlier, the wisteria in the backyard hung in full clusters, purple like bruises. I was up on a small step stool, clipping the stray strands so the trellis would not give way. Sun came in pale and thin through the live oaks. Mark's truck bounced into the driveway. He got out with his old grin, the one from Little League, and graduation, the one I had not seen in years. "Mom," he called, "you have a second." He was already walking, already standing under the trellis with his hands jammed into his pockets. He looked like a boy again. Then Sienna came around the truck and the light shifted. Wine-red dress that fit like a plan, hair pulled back tight, minimal makeup, gold hoops. She moved slow as if she had all day to be impressive. "Ms. Marquez," she said. "She said my name right. Mark talks about your garden like it is its own person." She did not look at the wisteria first. She looked at the house, windows, roof line, the heavy front door with the old brass lock. Then she smiled at me the way a good realtor smiles at a buyer. Warmth but measured. I brought coffee to the patio. She praised the mugs. She told me about Austin, about a panel at a tech conference, about brand strategy, like it was a kind of magic. When I told her my husband had laid the tile in the kitchen on his knees 1 square a night after work, she took my hand with both of hers and said it was beautiful. She smelled like bergamot and a little vanilla underneath. They came for Sunday dinner every week for a while. Sienna asked where I found the table runner. She liked the china in the cabinet, but said her style was minimalist. Mark kept touching her elbow. He laughed at things that were not funny. If she arrived late, he paced until she did. One afternoon, she came alone a weeknight with thin rain on the glass. She stood in my entryway, wet hair tucked behind her ears. No lipstick. She held her purse close and her voice was small. "I hate asking," she said. "The bank turned down my loan. I want to launch my own consultancy. It is the right time." I showed them everything. Projections pipeline. They still said no, and I do not want to stress Mark. She looked down at her shoes. She let the silence sit between us until I felt I had made it. How much, I asked. 50, she said. I would pay it back in 6 months, with interest if you want. The old safe was behind the coats in the hallway. I spun the dial and thought of my husband's hands. I had shoved dollars into envelopes for years. Farmers market cash, weekends selling tamales at St. Teresa, money for emergencies, for broken water heaters and root canals. I stacked the bills on the kitchen table. She cried when I slid the envelope toward her, not loud, just the kind of tears that make a face look softer. "Thank you," she said. "You will not regret this." I put my extra house key on the table and pushed it over too. "For emergencies," I said. She set her palm over the brass and nodded as if she had been expecting it. The wedding was in a hill country venue with a long view and a sunset that looked painted. White chairs and glass cylinders with floating candles. The photographer kept telling me to turn my chin. I paid the invoices and signed my name where people told me to sign. 90,000 in total by the end. Sienna selected everything. She told me not to worry about the flowers. She would make it modern. There was a band. The cake had faint gold leaf along the edges. Mark looked at her like he had just stepped into air and discovered he could stay there without falling. For a moment in the chapel, I felt something I did not have a name for. A tightness along my ribs. I bent to fix the hem of Sienna's dress because I needed to do something with my hands. After the wedding, the house shifted 1 inch at a time, not all at once. Mark and Sienna came on Tuesdays sometimes. Sienna had calls and needed a quiet place with good light. My dining room had both. She led with kindness and then did not ask twice. "Your pantry," she said the first Tuesday, standing with the door open. "We should organize it. Alphabetical makes it easier. Oregano next to paprika. You will love it." She did not see my face when she moved the cinnamon. She could not. It was turned toward the shelves, toward rows of glass that suddenly made me feel like a stranger in my own kitchen. Mark sat at the table with his laptop open and said she knew systems. I washed a cup that was already clean and set it to dry. The catalogs came next. She spread them on the green sofa and smoothed the pages with her hand. Neutral couches, straight lines, legs like sticks, the kind of furniture that looks like it never gets dirty. "This one," she said, "track arm, sand linen, it will open the room." "I like my sofa," I said. She laughed gently. "It is sweet, Elena. It has history, but it drags down the space." She left the catalogs behind as if the decision had already made itself. It was small things, then bigger ones. She brought a box with new pans and told me my old skillet would leach iron I did not need at my age. She put sweaters I had owned for years into black trash bags and said she would take them to Goodwill so I would not have to. When I dug through the bag later, I found the cardigan my mother had knitted soft as air already at the bottom where I could not reach. Mark said she was helping. He said she loved me. He said this was what family meant. On Sundays, I cooked. On Tuesdays, I set my coffee down without a coaster in my own house and apologized to a woman in her 30s for leaving a ring on the wood. I learned to read the temperature in her shoulders when she was on a call. I learned when to slow my steps so my footsteps would not cross her words. The first time she used the key, I was in old leggings, hair in a clip, scrubbing the sink. The door opened. She stepped in with sunlight behind her like a cutout. She did not knock. She held up a tote bag with a laptop and 4 chargers. "Workday," she said. "I told Mark last night." I had not heard. "Of course," I said. She hugged me. "Bergamot." She moved past me and into the pantry, and I watched the back of her head. There was a thin white line at her part from a summer sunburn. She lined jars in rows, labels all pointed forward now like soldiers. My hand found the skillet on the stove by habit. The iron felt heavy. It always did. I set it down again and wiped my palms on a towel I did not remember buying. She brought a stack of glossy magazines the next week and laid them across my old cedar chest. "What is in the cabinet?" she asked, tapping the china with her fingernail. "Vintage floral is popular right now. You could get 15, maybe 20. It is money sitting in the dark. You should wear something new." I closed the cabinet. The glass made a sound like ice. "Maybe another time," I said. She smiled and leaned closer, voice warm. "You save too much. It is good to let go." The balloons on my birthday were up because she said silver was cleaner than color. The lights were dimmed. Music came soft from the speaker. Celeste, her mother, arrived with pearls and a neutral dress and eyes that touched everything. She hugged the air near my cheek. "What a lovely little place," she said, "so cozy." Her friends sat and crossed their legs the same way. The neighbors brought a pie and stood close to me in the kitchen. I could feel the heat from the oven gather in the space under my neck. I whisked with my left hand, wiped the counter with my right. Mark came in, kissed my temple, and checked his phone. He smelled like cedar soap. He smiled at Sienna, and she smiled back, and then turned to the table and placed her fingers on the chair again. "That seed is for my mother," she said, same voice as before. "Elena, you do not mind, do you?" The steam from the pot beaded my face. I lifted the lid a little and set it back. I could hear the soft whir of the refrigerator, the click where the compressor caught. I looked at the green sofa. My husband's photograph was on the shelf above it. The frame had a nick on the bottom where it had fallen once during an earthquake that never made the news. I took the spatula and slid it under the tortillas to turn them. A bubble rose in the middle and I pressed it down with the back of the spoon. The room waited. No one talked. The balloons reflected a warped version of me, small and curved and shiny. I put the spatula down. I turned the knob on the stove. The fire went quiet. I reached for the small black button on the speaker and the music died. Sienna's perfume hung in the hush like a new rule. I wiped my hands on my apron and walked toward the table. The front door clicked again. Not a knock. The soft sound of a key in a familiar lock. The door gave that small metal sigh that means a key turned clean. Celeste came in on a ribbon of cool air and perfume that was not bergamot, powder and musk. She lifted her sunglasses to her head and took the room in one measured sweep. "What a turnout," she said. "Sienna, darling." They kissed the air. Mark checked the oven like he knew what to do with it. I moved a stack of plates. Sienna guided Celeste to the head chair and set a linen napkin there like a flag. I took 2 slow breaths and went back to the stove. I turned the tortillas once. I shut the oven door with my hip. My hands felt too clean. This is how it went for months. Little adjustments that changed the shape of the day. On Tuesdays, Sienna began to work from my dining room because my light was good and my internet never dropped. She said it like a compliment. She would set her laptop by the window, line up her pens, place her phone screen down, and then flip it over again. "Elena, could I get a glass with ice?" she would say without looking up. "No, not that one. The tall one, thank you." She never raised her voice. She did not have to. The voice did the work by being gentle. I started to move quieter. I timed the microwave to her calendar. When she said she had a pitch, I stirred soup on the back burner so the bubbles would not pop loud enough to cross the room. Mark came and went. He was always between things, meetings stacked like plates in a sink. He kissed my head. He told me I should be proud that Sienna trusted me with her work days. He showed me a new feature on his phone that dimmed the ringtone. He said it would help with the calls. The pantry changed, then the living room. Sienna walked with a catalog balanced on her palm and stopped in front of the green sofa. She smoothed the page with 3 fingers. Sand linen, clean lines, legs like sticks. A photo of a couple who did not look like they ate meals with sauce. "This would make the space breathe," she said. "Open the flow." I said I liked my sofa. She said, of course, and smiled, which meant the conversation was moving without me. Catalogs slept on the cedar chest. I did not touch them, and they still multiplied. The cabinet was next. She stood in front of the glass, tapping her nail against the shelf. "What is the story with these?" she asked. "The little flowers are charming in a vintage way. There is a market. You are sitting on value." "My mother brought them when she married," I said. She tilted her head. "And how often do you use them?" "Christmas," I said. It came out quick. "Then we could at least photograph them," she said, as if that were kindness. She brought black bags inside one Saturday. She said it was time to simplify. She asked if she could help me with my closet. She moved fast, holding sweaters at arm's length and judging them with her eyes. A blue cardigan disappeared into a bag before I could name it. Thick knit. My mother's hands from another winter. I reached for the bag too late and felt the plastic resist and give a little and then sit heavy on the floor. "Do not worry," Sienna said. "I will drop these at Goodwill. You will feel lighter." She said it like a doctor. Mark appeared in the doorway and told me to let her help. He said I kept everything and that it made him anxious. On the days she worked from my table, I ate in the kitchen without thinking about when I started. Near the stove, there is a low stool. I would set my plate on the counter and stand or sit on that stool. Spoon between bites, listen for her voice to dip clean while I was chewing. It felt like an accident at first, and then it felt like a routine I had made alone. The neighbors noticed the traffic. Kenji and Marla came by with grapefruit from their tree and a joke about me being busier than the food truck on Barton Springs. Mrs. Delgado from 3 houses over started asking small questions in the grocery aisle. Had I been forgetting my list? Did I ever misplace my keys? It sounded like concern. It did not feel like it. By the time November curled into December, Sienna had a plan for the holidays. She told me at my counter, pouring herself coffee, as if she were in her own kitchen. "This year we should do Christmas here," she said. "It makes sense. The space is central. My family wants to meet your neighbors." I had already taken the storage bins down, the kind with red lids. I had unwound the string lights and smoothed the nativity cloth with my palm. I kept my voice even. "I always cook," I said, "turkey and ham and punch. The kids come with Nina when she can." Sienna smiled. She touched my hand. "You do too much," she said. "You deserved a rest. Let me handle it. We will keep it simple and elegant." She used the key again the week before Christmas. No knock. The lock turned like a habit. She carried in a silver tree in 3 sections and a box of matte ornaments that did not shine. The nativity went back in its box. The embroidered cloth went back into the drawer. The living room looked like a hotel, which I suppose was the point. Celeste arrived early on Christmas Eve. She brought a cake with white frosting and a ribbon and walked the rooms with a level gaze. "So much potential," she said, touching the edge of the console table the way dealers touch wood at antique fairs. "A fresh coat of paint would do wonders." Her eyes paused on the old portrait of my husband. Her mouth lifted on one side. She turned away and called for Sienna. Dinner filled the house with that holiday heat that makes windows sweat. We ate sitting too straight on chairs that did not want us to relax. Mark laughed at a story his brother-in-law told that was not funny. I poured punch and felt my hands begin to shake a little from the effort of holding the glass steady. When someone tried to help, Sienna said I had it covered. She smiled and said I liked to be useful. After the last dish was set to dry, I went to my room and sat on the bed for a minute. There is a photo of my husband on the nightstand, the one where he's wearing a hat that made him laugh. I looked at his eyes and felt my own get hot. I washed my face and told myself I was tired. It felt true enough to pass. Near midnight, the house went quiet in layers. First the TV, then the soft static of small talk, then the footsteps, then the kitchen. I came out for water and stopped in the hallway when I heard voices. It was Sienna and Celeste low in the dark. No music to hide the shape of what they were saying. How long, Celeste said. Hard to know, Sienna said. She is 68. Health looks fine on paper, but anything can happen. And the title Celeste said? Whose name? Her name, Sienna said. For now. Mark will inherit. Nina lives in Denver. Out-of-state siblings complicate things less than you would think. They laughed a little. It sounded like the end of ice cubes sliding against glass. When it is done, Sienna said we sell. Terrytown is hot. 3.2, maybe 3.4 if we list at the right time. We could get a place near downtown. New. No trees dropping leaves everywhere. Celeste made a humming sound, the kind that says she is seeing the kitchen in her head already. And if she lingers, Celeste said. If she gets stubborn. There are communities, Sienna said. Cedar Ridge, Live Oak. They have memory care wings. It is nicer than here. Activities and friends. Mark is already thinking about quality of life. He hates the idea of her being alone. Does he hate the idea of letting go of this address, Celeste said. He will adjust, Sienna said. He always does. There was a pause. The refrigerator hummed and clicked. A car went by and cast two pale lines through the blinds. You are sure about the timing, Celeste said. We nudge, Sienna said. Just enough. She already forgets small things. A missed appointment here and there. If we help, the pattern along the paperwork writes itself. The glass in my throat dried out. I pressed my hand against the wall to feel something solid. Milk and cinnamon from the earlier pot still hung in the air. The smell made me think of every other Christmas that had ever happened in this house, and then it did not. Do not take risks, Celeste said. That woman has a spine, I can tell. I know how to manage her, Sienna said. She thinks I am saving her from herself. That is the easiest kind to move. I stood there until the cold of the tile came up through the soles of my feet. My palm left a print on the paint. I took one step back and the floor creaked. The conversation paused. Sienna's chair scraped quietly as if she had turned her head. I moved the rest of the way to the sink and filled a glass. I let the water run until it was cold, and then I shut it off. I drank with both hands because the shaking had started. On the way to my room, I passed the green sofa. The streetlight threw a square on the cushions, pale and steady. A sprig of wisteria from the centerpiece had fallen onto the arm purple against the worn fabric. I set it on the mantel under my husband's picture and went to bed. Morning came flat and too bright. I brewed coffee and could not taste it. The house felt a degree colder, as if the air had backed away from the walls. Mark texted that he would stop by. I wiped the counter twice and set 2 mugs out like a habit I could not quit. He came with his work bag and a face that tried to be gentle. He sat on the green sofa and pressed his hands together between his knees. I took the chair across from him. The wisteria outside made shadows on the rug. I heard some things last night, I said. My voice was even. I kept my eyes on his face. In the kitchen. You know what I mean. He closed his eyes for a second and opened them again. The smile he offered had no place to sit. Mom, he said. You are tired. Holidays do that. Sienna is trying to help. She wants what is best. She is thinking about your quality of life. My quality of life, I said, in a place called Cedar Ridge. He looked at the floor. His shoes were new. The laces were too white. He picked at a loose thread on his cuff. You cannot be alone here forever, he said. You should be around people, activities, safety. The house is a lot. It is too much for one person. This is not a shopping list, I said. This is my home. He kept his voice soft, like he was talking to a child. You are being emotional. Of course I am. This is where your father died. This is where you learn to walk. He stood. He moved to the window and looked out at the fence. I saw his reflection ghosted on the glass. I have to think about my family, he said. Sienna and I want a future, kids. We could do more if we did not have to worry about you being alone out here. You could do more, I said, by selling what is not yours. He turned. His eyes were good eyes. He had my father's eyes. For a second I thought they would save me. He set his jaw the way men do when they believe a decision is finished. I cannot do this if you're going to guilt me, he said. I love you, I do. But I am not your little boy. He kissed my hair and left. The door closed with his usual click. The sound meant nothing, and it still made me feel like a nail had gone into wood. 2 days later, Sienna worked from my dining room again. The light was clean. She took the head of the table like someone who had been assigned it in a seating chart. She set her laptop down, lined up her pens, put her phone screen down, and then flipped it over again. Bergamot moved with her. She took a call. She smiled into the screen at a name I did not recognize. I will be 5, she said. She stood and went down the hall to the bathroom. The phone buzzed where she had left it. The screen lit with a name. Rory. The letters looked too friendly and modern for what they carried. The sound kept going. A body can hold a lot of quiet. I picked up the phone because you can only pretend a sound is not happening for so long. Hello, I said. Hey, baby, a young man said, bright and careless. Did you talk to the lawyer about the conservatorship timing? 6 months if she plays nice. A year if she gets spicy. I did not speak. The word baby hung like a smell. Babe, he said again, you there. Who is this, I said. There was a space filled with nothing. Then a quick exhale. He hung up. I set the phone down exactly where it had been. I could hear water in the pipes, a little rush from the bathroom. I went to the sink and ran the tap for a second to cover the sound of my heart in my own chest. I dried my hands. When Sienna came back, I was at the stove stirring beans that did not need stirring. Was that for me? She asked casual. It stopped before I got to it, I said. She smiled. Her teeth were even and very white. She sat back down and typed with a light touch. That night I could not sleep. The old Nokia I kept in the kitchen drawer for power outages still charged no matter how long it had been since I had used it. It had a camera that took photos with more grain than detail. It would have to be enough. On Thursday, Sienna came with a blue folder in her purse. I saw it when she pulled out her makeup pouch. The folder had a plastic tab with a handwritten label I could not read from where I stood. She left for the bathroom again. I moved to the table. My hands shook. I breathed. I unzipped the purse and set the zipper back in place with my thumb so it would not scream metal. I slid the folder out and opened it. The first page said Petition for Appointment of Guardian. My name, my birth date. A sentence about cognitive decline dressed up to sound kind. Someone had left space for a doctor to fill with words about me that would not fit. Next pages were printouts, a market analysis for Terrytown, a property appraisal with a number I could not look at for long, a sheet from a memory care facility with happy people in soft clothes on the cover, a calculation on yellow paper in a hand I knew as Sienna's. 3.2 million minus fees minus 5 years of care equals what they would keep. At the back of the folder were messages printed out from a chat I did not know. Sienna to someone named Rory. His responses. They called each other love. They were not careful. He told her to keep Mark calm. She told him Mark would sign whatever God put in front of him if she acted like it was for his mother. She told him she would move to Florida when the money hit. She told him Austin was dusty and old. He sent a photo of a beach with water that looked too blue to be true. I took photos of each page with the Nokia. The click was too loud. It sounded like something in an old movie. I pressed the phone to my stomach to muffle it. I turned pages with my fingertips so I would not leave oil where oil had not been. I slid the folder back into the purse, and the purse back to the exact angle it had been, strap curled like a sleeping snake. When she came back, she asked if the Wi-Fi had glitched. I said no. She asked for iced water. I brought it in the tall glass she liked. She smiled and said I was a lifesaver. After she left, I called Nina. It was late in Denver, but she picked up on the second ring. Her voice is my voice, 10 years younger and tougher. Mom, she said, what is wrong? I told her, not everything. Enough. Paper. A boy named Rory. A plan that turned my house into a number. I am coming, she said. We do not have to make noise, I said. Not yet. We will not whisper, she said. We will do it right. In the morning, I called Daniel Archer. He had been my husband's lawyer for things like wills and small disputes about a fence that did not stop a dog. His voice is old Texas dry and calm. "Bring what you have," he said. "I will bring what you need." He arrived that afternoon with a briefcase that had seen things. He sat at my table and looked at the photos on the Nokia without comment. He asked me to tell him what I had heard, and I did. He nodded small when I was done. "We can put the house in a trust," he said. "You keep control while you live. You decide what happens after. It will not be part of a simple inheritance. Their papers will not grab it." He called a doctor named Larkin who came the next day. Dr. Larkin wore sneakers and a watch with a rubber band. She sat with me for 2 hours and asked me to tell her a story backwards. She asked me to copy a drawing. She asked me to remember 5 words. I did. She asked me to name things that started with a letter until I laughed. "You are fine," she said, "better than fine." She promised a report with words that would sit heavy in a file if anyone asked to see them. Daniel came back with papers for me to sign. I read every line with the patience of someone shelling pecans. My name looked strange and strong in blue ink. Nina flew in without telling Sienna. She stayed at my friend Lucy's house a few streets over so no one would see her car. She arrived at my back door with a grocery bag and a look that broke and held me at the same time. We set a small recorder the size of a thumb in the porcelain vase that sits on the sideboard where Sienna likes to plug in her laptop. It blinked once and went still like a good dog. For 2 weeks, we lived small and quiet and ready. Sienna worked her Tuesdays from my table with her voice like sugar. Sometimes she called Rory from the patio when she thought I was vacuuming. Sometimes she called him from the table. The recorder did not care. Nina listened live from the kitchen with her screen face down. Her mouth tilted when the words came too easy. "I am tired of playing nice," Sienna said one morning, her voice low and pleased. 3 months and it is done. He is weak. He hates conflict. He will sign to make the noise stop. When the house closes, I file. Then we do Florida like we said. Nina squeezed my hand. I watched the way Sienna's shoulders moved when she laughed. I watched the way she turned my spoon to stir her tea as if it were hers. She made other calls. Mrs. Delgado answered a number Sienna dialed and tried to whisper without knowing how. "You just need to say you saw her confused," Sienna said, that she forgot to lock the door. 30 is generous. A pause. A yes that sounded like a nod bigger than a head. The kind of yes people make when they finally step where the floor is not floors anymore. Dr. Larkin sent her report. Daniel filed what needed filing. The house moved into the trust like a ship sliding into water. I slept one night all the way through. On a Thursday, the air felt heavy and wet. Sienna had her tea in a white cup, and she was loose with happiness. Rory's voice on the other end was sunny and fast. Nina was in the kitchen with her earbuds half in. "Court can be slow," Rory said. "Do not drag it. Push." "I have a push," Sienna said. "Chamomile with a little help. People forget." Judges love a pattern. She misplaces. She repeats. She seems foggy. It writes itself. "What help?" he said. "Benadryl," she said. "Nothing dramatic, just enough to tilt the picture." The spoon in my hand touched the side of the pot and made a sound like a bell. I set it down and stood very still. Nina looked at me and then at the doorway. The recorder's tiny light did not blink. It did not need to. It had already heard what it came for. The front gate clicked, tires on gravel. A new engine note reached the house and then cut. The doorknob turned with the easy motion of someone who did not expect to be stopped. The balloons were caught in the ceiling fan, turning slow. Silver napkins lay like folded birds. I stood with my palms dry now, the stove quiet, the speaker dead. The room waited for someone to breathe first. "It is my house," I said. "Sit." Sienna blinked. The smile returned to her mouth by reflex, then drained. She eased into the headchair as if the wood might bite. Celeste set her handbag in the place where she could touch it without looking. Mark's eyes searched my face and then went to the floor. Nina came in from the hall carrying a serving bowl like a guest. No one had known she was in town. Her hair was pulled back and her hands were steady. Surprised, she said to the room, "I flew in." She put the bowl down and moved to the cabinet under the TV where the remotes live. Her fingers found the cable Archer had left. He had arrived an hour earlier with a briefcase and a calm I could hold on to. He stood in the kitchen doorway, now tie-loose hands in his pockets, a posture that said he belonged anywhere wood met tile. "Before we eat," I said, "we will look at something." Nina clicked the input. The TV found the laptop. The first image was a scanned page with a courthouse seal. Petition for appointment of guardian. My name. The date. A line about cognitive decline dressed like a gentleman in a clean shirt. "What is this?" Mark said. It came out low. He had not meant to be heard. Context, Archer said in a voice that did not ask for permission. "What you are about to see and hear was obtained in this house with the consent of the owner. It is genuine." Sienna stood fast. The chair legs scraped. "Turn that off. You cannot just show private things." Celeste put a hand on her daughter's arm. It was both a hold and a warning. "Sit," I said again. Nina went to the next slide. A property valuation for Terrytown. A number that looked like a dare. Another page with logos from Cedar Ridge and Live Oak. A list of monthly fees. A pastel photo of two older people in cardigans laughing at nothing. Murmurs moved through the room like a breeze people pretend not to feel. Kenji leaned forward. Marla held his sleeve. Mrs. Delgado pressed her lips flat and looked at the carpet. The air had that heaviness a house gets right before a storm breaks and then refuses to happen. "Mom," Mark said, "let me see that." Nina clicked again. The yellow page with Sienna's handwriting filled the screen. 3.2 minus fees minus 5 years equals what they would keep. The ink had a small smear where a hand had waited too long to dry. Sienna's face stilled. It is a thing the way a person can remove expression like taking off a coat. She turned to Mark with open hands. "This is twisted out of shape," she said. "Your mother is making us into villains. We were planning. Planning is not a crime." "Keep going," I said to Nina. Screenshots replaced the yellow paper. The chat bubbles were not subtle. Names at the top, Sienna and Rory. The tone was easy and affectionate in a way that did not belong in my dining room. Love. Florida. Weak. Sign anything. Austin is tired and old. The beach photo with blue that was not real. The room tightened. Mark's mouth opened and closed with no sound from it. A person learns what they look like when they hear something that splits their life. He was learning it now. "Audio," Archer said. Nina tapped a key. The sound filled the room. Sienna's voice, Rory's laugh, conservatorship timing, judges, patterns, chamomile with help. The word Benadryl soft and almost friendly. There was a collective shift in chairs that made a wooden groan like a ship. "That is not me," Sienna said. "Anyone can cut audio." Archer took a folder from his briefcase and held up a page without handing it over. "Forensic analysis," he said. "Authenticated. Continuous. No edits." Celeste looked at her daughter, and something passed between them that had no use now. "Also, this," Archer said. He placed statements on the table in front of Mark. The bank logos were all clean lines and trust. Applications for credit in Mark's name. Signatures that looked like his if you were not his mother. Balances that stacked until the page felt heavier than paper. Mark did not sit. He could not. He looked taller and smaller at the same time. He flipped a page and another and then had to stop because his hands were shaking. He looked at Sienna as if she were across a river. "Is it true?" he asked. "It is complicated," she said. "We share a life. I make decisions. I move things forward. That is what you love about me." He laughed once, and it sounded like something had come cracked out of him by accident. Nina turned the volume down a notch and played the last clip. Sienna's voice again this time, sweet and certain. Mrs. Delgado tried to whisper. 30 is generous. Elena forgets. She talks to herself. She leaves doors unlocked. The recorder heard the nods. Marla turned to Mrs. Delgado. Her eyes were hard and disappointed in a way that did not need words. Mrs. Delgado looked at her lap. "I will return the money," she said to no one in particular. "I was wrong." "We are not doing this," Sienna said. "We are not holding court in a living room." "We are," I said. "We are holding you to what you chose to do in my house." Celeste stood. Her voice found its winter coat. "Enough. We are leaving." Nina stepped to the front door and leaned against it, as if she were considering a breeze. Kenji moved to the kitchen entrance and found something in the drawer that made a small, dull clink when he set it on the counter. "No threats. Just the block in place." "You can walk out when we are finished," Archer said. "Mrs. Marquez has a restraining order prepared. She also has a file ready for the county attorney. I am here to offer terms. Sign and leave clean or argue and see what happens." Sienna looked around the room as if a hidden camera would flash and a game show host would laugh and hand her a check. There were only neighbors and family and a TV filled with her own words. She turned back to Mark. "You will not let them do this," she said. It was not a question. He looked at her, and I watched love go out of someone the way a light goes out when the power cuts on a hot day. It is not slow. It is instant. He set the papers down like they were hot. You used me, he said. You used my mother. Get out. The room did not applaud. It does not when a man tells the truth in a room like this. It only gets very still. Sienna's mouth was a straight line now. The softness left her voice. This is ridiculous, she said. That trust will not hold. Judges lean practical. Everyone knows older women get confused. You are trying to trap me with theater. Archer waited for her to finish sounding angry. Then he placed a pen on the table and slid a thin stack toward her with 2 fingers. Divorce, he said. Debt assignment, permanent stay away. No claims on assets. You sign now and you walk out with your shoes on. Your alternative is a different kind of walk. Celeste reached for the papers and read the headings with a speed that said this was not her first time with contracts. She looked at Sienna in a way that made her daughter look smaller. Signed, Celeste. Dete? Geek, Celeste said. Sienna let out one short laugh like she had swallowed something bitter. You pick them, she said to me. Weak sons, nosy daughters, lawyers with time. She picked up the pen. Her hand hovered. She looked at the door and found Nina's face there. She looked at the kitchen and found Kenji not moving. She looked at the TV where her own messages waited for a reason to turn into email attachments with addresses that would not be kind. She signed. Archer did what lawyers do when paper becomes real. He checked the signatures for shape and place. He nodded. He took out another form and a stamped envelope and slid both to Sienna without ceremony. The order takes effect when this is filed, he said. You cannot come within 200 yards of this property or this person. Violations carry teeth. Sienna stood. She reached for her purse and found Celeste had already picked it up. She held it like a purse and like evidence. Sienna turned to me and smiled without warmth. You will die here, she said softly. Alone with your old things. I will decide where I die, I said, and I will decide what stays. She took one step and found Mark in her path. He had not planned it. His feet had. He looked at her one last time. He did not speak. He moved aside and did not touch her. Celeste went out first with her chin steady. Sienna followed with her head forward like someone walking into wind. The door closed. The latch found its home with that small metal sound. The room held its breath. The neighbors exhaled. Marla put a hand on my shoulder and squeezed once. Kenji picked up the thing he had set on the counter and put it back in the drawer. Mrs. Delgado whispered, I am sorry, and carried her sorry out with the pie plate she had brought. I picked up the remote and turned off the TV. My hand left a print on the black screen as if I had put it there to steady myself. Nina took plates to the sink and ran water that sounded like a river. Archer packed his briefcase. He looked at me and tipped his head an inch. It said good work without words. Mark stood by the green sofa and did not sit. He pressed his palms to his eyes until his knuckles went white. When he dropped his hands, his face looked older. He opened his mouth and closed it like he could not find the right first line. I crossed the room and put my hand on the back of the sofa to keep from putting it on his shoulder. The cushion gave under my fingers. The fabric pulled back into place when I let go. Outside, the wisteria moved in a slow wind that had finally found the yard. Nina turned off the tap. The house was quiet in the good way and the bad way a house can be quiet. Archer cleared his throat and lifted his briefcase. We will file these now, he said. Eat your dinner. He stepped around Mark and went out. The door closed behind him. The latch made that small sound again. The balloons tapped the ceiling fan with a soft plastic kiss as if nothing had changed. No one ate. Plates cooled under the low light. The room held that after sound of a storm that never broke. Nina stacked forks. I set the tortillas back on warm and covered them with a towel. The green sofa took Mark's weight when he finally sat elbows on knees, head dropped like a man coming back from a far road. I am sorry, he said. Not loud. The kind of sorry that finds its shape in the mouth and stays there. I do not know how I let it get this far. I stood at the end of the sofa, close but not touching. The fabric had that old cotton feel that remembers hands. I looked at my son until he lifted his head. His eyes were red and clear at the same time. You let someone speak for you, I said. You will not do that again. He nodded. I will fix what I can. Nina poured water and handed him a glass. He drank it like that was a task he could complete. Archer came from the hall with his briefcase, nodded once to me, and slipped out into the night. The latch made its metal sound. The house took a breath. We ate then quietly. Kenji toasted with hibiscus tea a small clink that made everyone smile without forcing it. Marla told a story about their grapefruit tree getting the top blown off one summer and coming back anyway. The neighbors left with plates and quick squeezes of my arm. Nina carried the last dish to the sink. The balloons tapped the fan until I pulled the string and stilled them. Later, after the counters were clean, Mark stood in the doorway of the kitchen. The light behind him made a soft edge around his shoulders. "I cannot stay," he said. "Not tonight, but may I come in the morning?" "Yes," I said. "Come early." He stepped forward and kissed my hair. He held there for a second like he was remembering something from when he was small. Then he left. The yard light clicked on and off. The night pressed close in that comfortable way Texas nights do when the heat finally lets go. The morning had good quiet. I made coffee and opened the windows. The house smelled like cumin and lemon and a little bleach. Sun found the spots on the floor that always take it. Nina sat at the table with her knees tucked under her bare feet on the rung like a teenager. She watched the steam lift from her cup. "He will do the work," she said. "He can." "I know," I said. "It will not be fast." The doorbell rang. Daniel Archer did not use his key, even though he had one from years ago when he fed our cat during a funeral. He stood with a single sheet in a plastic sleeve in a brown envelope. "Filed," he said. "Restraining order stamped. The divorce papers will route through the court in order. I would like a signature here for the trust copy." I signed where the sticky flag waited. He tucked the sheet away and put the envelope on the table. "What is that?" Nina asked. "Copies for your records," he said. He hesitated, then looked at me with a question I already had the answer to. "May I ask you to deliver something I said? Off the record." I went to the bedroom and opened the old cedar chest. The wood smell rose like a remembered song. I took out a small box wrapped with twine, the kind I used for cookies at church sales. Inside were neatly banded bills. 50,000. The same number I had taken from the safe on a rainy night. A note lay on top in my hand. "For what you said you would return." I closed the lid and handed the box to Archer. Nina watched me and did not argue. "Make sure she takes it," I said. "I will not speak to her." Archer's mouth tightened in a way that meant he was moved and did not plan to say so. He tucked the box into his briefcase between files. "I will see it done," he said. Mark came before lunch. He looked worn soft at the edges, which sometimes happens when pride burns off. He stood in the kitchen with his hands open. He did not try to make a speech. He told the truth. Told the begin. I saw it, I heard it, I knew pieces and looked away. I am ashamed. "Good," Nina said from the table, not unkind. He looked at me. "Will you let me earn my way back?" "You will not earn it with talk," I said. "You will show up when you say you will. You will not let anyone speak to me as if I were furniture. You will decide for yourself." He nodded. He told me he had called a therapist and that he had an appointment. He said the word codependent as if it belonged to someone else and now belonged to him. He laughed once without humor and then stopped. "You will not carry all the debt," I said. "You will carry half. I will carry half. You will get a second job for a while. You will not drown." He swallowed. "Thank you." He went to the green sofa and sat. He looked out at the yard where the wisteria made their purples and whites. His shoulders dropped an inch. He stayed for a long hour without looking at his phone. By afternoon, the house began to return to itself. I took the nativity cloth from the drawer and smoothed it even though the season was over. I put the bowl with the chipped blue rim back on the table. I lifted the skillet from the drawer and rubbed oil into the iron until it took light again. I set the china upright in the cabinet and left the glass door closed and clean. Nina packed to fly the next day. She left a sweater on the back of a chair and kissed my cheek 3 times. She walked backwards down the path, smiling like she could make it last if she kept me in sight. The gate clicked. The sun slid behind the live oaks and turned the yard gold. Days added themselves together. The house breathed. Sienna did not come. Celeste did not call. Mrs. Delgado left a pie on the stoop with a note that said nothing but her name. I watered the beds out back while the cicadas made their slow chorus. The lizards did their push-ups on the fence posts. Pieces small sounds happening in the right order. On a Saturday, Mark arrived with someone new. He did not make an announcement. He simply stood aside and let her step in. "Mom," he said, "this is Paige." She held a plastic container with both hands. Oatmeal cookies with pecans. She wore a white blouse and jeans and shoes that could get dirty without anyone worrying. Her hair was clean and short enough not to catch on anything. She smiled like a person who makes children sit up straighter by asking them questions that make them want to. "Mrs. Marquez," she said, "I have heard about your garden." We stood under the trellis and I showed her where the wisteria knots make the wood swell. She listened. She asked when to prune and why not now. She got soil under her nails and did not apologize. When she left, she wrapped the container in a towel so it would not knock on her knee while she walked. Sundays found their rhythm again. Mark came, sometimes with Paige, sometimes alone. He fixed the sticky hinge on the pantry door without saying so out loud. He changed the filter in the fridge. He sat with his coffee and gave answers that were not about other people. One bright evening, he showed up with a small bag and a look that was not nervous so much as awake. He asked to take the string lights from the cupboard. He asked me to help him plug them into the extension cord and drape them along the fence. Paige arrived as the sun was taking its last hard light. Nina FaceTimed in from her kitchen in Denver. The kids were at the table behind her doing homework and pretending not to listen. The yard took on that soft glow string lights make no matter how new or old they are. Mark led Paige to the spot under the wisteria where the shade is always good. He spoke plain words that did not try to be poetry. He asked a question. She said yes. They stood there with their foreheads together, and the lights made circles in their eyes. Nina whooped. I clapped in that quiet way I clap when I have to keep my hands from my face. Later, after everyone left, I stood in the doorway with my hand on the frame. The room smelled like lemons and the iron pan cooling, and a small sweetness from the cookies. The green sofa pulled the last light into itself. The key hung on its hook by the door. It did not move. Months passed. The paperwork finished its work. Archer brought a slim folder with stamped copies and a page that said the order was permanent. He set it down and did not linger. He asked if my cat still hid when trucks went by. I told him she did. One morning the bank app lit up with a deposit. $50,000, no name. I called Mark. Did you send this? I asked. Yes, he said, all of it. I signed the last check today. It was my debt to clear. Thank you, I said. I used part of it to have the stove serviced. The tech cleaned the jets and replaced a gasket that had started to crack. When he turned the burners on, the blue ring of flame was even and strong. He complimented the age of the appliance the way some men compliment old trucks. The yard filled itself in again with the slow patience of plants that know how to live here. Kenji brought me seeds for a patch of Mexican tarragon. Marla traded me grapefruit for tamales and made jokes about bartering like pioneers. Mrs. Delgado waved from her porch and left space for me to wave back when I felt like it. On a bright afternoon, I moved the couch a hand's width to the left, the way I used to when I needed the room to feel new without changing anything. The sunlight hit the cushion exactly where my husband liked to sit. I stood in that square and warmed my feet. I went to the kitchen and turned the knob on the stove out of habit. The small tick of gas, the click of the igniter, the ring of blue coming up even. I set the skillet on the flame and waited for the handle to heat just enough to say it was ready. Outside, a breeze moved through the wisteria and knocked a few petals loose. They drifted down and caught on the grass near the steps. The key hung on its hook where I had put it. The house held its shape. The air sat right in the rooms it had always known. I stood there long enough to feel it, then picked up the spoon and stirred. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. I'll see you next time as we continue exploring more journeys and lessons together.